All right, we are getting started, and I'm not slowing down for you. You should have your notebook open, and you should be ready to start cracking. If you need more light over there in this dark area, you can turn on this side of light if you want to. That's up to you. Okay. Now, it's been a long time, and so part of this will be review. And you tell me if you want me to just rush on through that. We know this already, Mr. Burrell. So, what is our main heading today? You may have already started it from 2 weeks ago before spring break. We are doing the end of the Warring States period and the beginning of Wave 2, the rise of the Qin dynasty. Okay? Wave 2 begins. Qin dynasty is the rise. Han, Shangzhou, Warring States, Qin. Qin rise, Han, peak, POD, crash. So today and next class we'll get through Qin and into Han. Qin rose during the Warring States period because, as you should remember, Qin was one of the Warring States. How many of you remember where the Qin state was during the Warring States period? On what river? The Wei River. What other dynasty founding vassal state was on the Wei River? No, Luoyang's not on the Wei River. What city is on the Wei River? Xi'an. Remember, I told you, that's why we studied these cities in the geography. Xi'an, Wei River. That's where the terracotta warriors are. Right? Xi'an, the Wei River. That's where the Silk Road starts. All this stuff, it's on the Wei. Luoyang is on the Central Plain. That's always the eastern capital. The western capital is always Xi'an, on the Wei River. The eastern capital is the Yellow River. So, an interesting pattern. And notice, Diogo, an interesting pattern here. Because I ask you again, what was the first vassal state that overthrew a dynasty and started a new one that was on the Wei River? Thank you, King Wan and King Wu, the founders of the Zhou. Remember, they were like a semi-barbaric frontier tribe. They weren't part of China proper. They were over there on the Wei River, almost cowboy-like, training horses from the nomads for the Shang kings and such. And from that Wei River, they ended up conquering the Shang and starting a new dynasty. Well, here we are. When they moved to their dynasty, what was the name of that jerk of a king who cried wolf? Yo, right? When he cried wolf and they burned the capital down and killed him, but his son ran away, excellent Monty Python style, where did his son run away from? Run away to? Now it's time for you to answer. Luoyang. So the pattern is over and over. Qin is in Shenyang, right? Qin is on the Wei River. There's the Yellow River paperclip shape. So when the Zhou moved their capital from the west to the east, because they got invaded by nomads and such, and so they had to vacate the Wei River, their original Western Zhou capital area, and move to the central plain of Luoyang, a new tribe moves in, and it's the Qin tribe. So it's a pattern. And the Qin, like the Western Zhou, were kind of cowboyish. They weren't real proper Chinese. They were a, quote, semi-barbaric tribe, frontier people, Wild West people. Again, horse breeders and all sort of thing. And so there's Qin, one of the warring states. You remember Confucius was born during the spring and autumn period when the hegemons were already starting to gobble up other states until there were less than 10 left. And by the time of the late warring states period, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 states left. And Qin will be the last state standing. What does this have to do with legalism? Legalism was the third of the 100 schools of thought that was arguing political solutions to different kings of the warring states about how to survive, how to become more powerful, and how to win in this law of the jungle thing called the Warring States period. the intertextuality thing to remind you of that, where you had like, the Tao Te Ching, like sort of slamming Confucianism by saying the best emperor is one who rules like a shadowy president. The second best is that Confucian type, the one who's loved, right? So remembering that intertextuality thing, they're always arguing with each other. The legalists are arguing against the Confucians. They're saying this: Confucianism says that we should go back to the ways of the Western Joe 800 years ago. Are you kidding? That's so idealistic. Oh, let's go back to ritual propriety. Let's go back to vassal loyalty. That's ridiculous, said the legalists. It's idealistic. Times have changed. And only a fool would think that Confucius has the solution. Go back to ritual propriety and benevolence and virtues. Because the lords themselves, the kings of all the warring states, show that no longer works. They're all unvirtuous, power-hungry, insanely ambitious people. So what do they argue instead? They argue that the Achilles heel of Joe feudalism is Joe feudalism. This whole idea of lords, vassals, aristocrats, fiefs, the whole feudal system is the problem. And the biggest problem is the aristocrats, inherited positions of officials. A minister of the interior or a minister of law or whatever dies and his son gets the position. That's a problem. And then the officials working under the ministers are aristocrats too. And they inherit their position. And so clearly, you're not going to have the best government possible when the only reason that people have the jobs in these government positions is because their daddy had it, right? And so we need to just get out of this trap, the legalists argued. So how do we do that? King. And by the way, the king that listened to the legalists the most was the Qin king. And so the Qin starts implementing legalist solutions and policies. This is the connection, just to make that clear if it's not already. The Qin listened and the Qin did what the legalists recommended they do, which was radical. Forget tradition, forget King Wan, King Wu, and the Duke, forget ritual, forget all that Confucian stuff, and be modern. And this is what blows me away. This is where it's interesting. Those of you who are in comparative gov, AP government, all that sort of thing, this is interesting because you see a modern political theory being born 400 years before Christ in the Qin dynasty. Let me give you evidence. And I'm recapping. Qin did have a king, and that king did have ministers who were aristocrats. To remind you of what that meant that those ministers had a lot of land, like the size of Singapore, right? One family. And they owned the serfs, the farmers who worked on that land. And they were the ones who got rich from the work of the farmers on their land. And they gave just a small percentage of that to the Qin king. So this is the problem. The noble families are rich and powerful at the expense of the king. He could be so much richer and so much more powerful if he got all of the serfs' labor, manpower for army, for public works, or whatever, right? Instead of just to cut a percentage. So we need to get rid of these aristocrats, but we can't because they're powerful. So how do we do it? Again, to repeat, and then I'm moving on from this. The legalist said, well, you can't anger the nobles in your own state because they will quite easily be tempted to kill you, to take power from you, because they have armies, they're very rich, they're very powerful. So you can't just take them on head on. You got to be smart. And this is where Chinese, military theory and political theory is so fun because it's always really, it's more like a chess game. The best general is one who wins a battle without one person striking a single blow. It's not the best general is not one who kills the most people. The best one is the one who doesn't even have to fight because he's so freaking smart, right? He's tricky. He's all sort of things. He's philosophical. So even military theory in China is philosophical and sage. It's so cool. I hope to find the time to show you some really cool movies that show this in fun action. In any case, so we can't take the aristocrats on head on. So how can we weaken them? Two ways. The first way, Qin, you're really lucky because you're on the periphery. So you can start expanding your territory into the frontier. The border regions where nobody lives, just start cutting down the trees, plowing the fields, put farmers on it, have them start growing food, and don't give that new territory to a lord. Instead, hire somebody, an official. Just like today, a job description. Your job is to collect taxes from the farmers, to make sure that the irrigation is good, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And so you're going to govern, not own, and your son's not going to inherit it. This is a job, not a gift. And you have to perform the job well, and if you don't, you'll be fired or worse, and replaced by somebody else. In other words, we have just gone from, and write this down because this simplifies it to its distilled core simple pattern. They're saying go from aristocracy to bureaucracy. From an administration by noble families to an administration by hired bureaucrats, officers, who can also be fired. The legalists were smart. They really thought about this, because if I have been hired to do my job by the king, who am I most loyal to? The king. Who do I depend on for my own paycheck? Because he didn't give me any land. He's giving me a paycheck. It's so modern. The king. Not my family, not my own, I don't have any land. I'm not getting filthy rich over this. So I depend on the king. So that's the first thing. The new territories in the frontiers are now all of the farmers, all of the work, all of the wealth is going straight to the king's treasury. And the king's wealth is starting to expand and expand and expand. With that wealth, he can buy arms, weapons. He can take soldiers from the new territory. Because notice, when you make new farmland, you're increasing the food supply. And when you have more food supply, people make more babies, and your population grows. Legalism started in the Qin around the 400s. Over 200 years, their population started expanding, and their army started expanding. And it was the king's army, all right? Once the king's army had expanded, its weapons had been bought and so forth with this new wealth, the king's army, the second legalist way to weaken the aristocrats without taking them on head on, because you don't want to do that. You don't want them killing you. Your own aristocrats are your enemy, was, okay, great. All these states that stay Confucian, that stay traditional, the good Chinese of the Zhou, who keep the aristocracy in the traditional ways, they're weak. Their kings are weak because their kings still have small armies and nobles who are against them. They're divided inside, all sort of stuff, right? And so they're weak. We have the advantage. We got radical, we broke with tradition, and we empowered the throne. And so, bam, let's take away. Let's look at, real quickly, let's look at what the map shows us. I love maps. I didn't used to. But seriously, look at what this shows us. These dates are the conquests of the Qin. So who did Qin, and it goes in backwards order, right? So watch Qin start making its move. Here's the end. Here's the climax of the Warring States period. Well, they took Han in 230. They took Wei in 225. I'm sorry, Zhao in 228 and Wei in 225. So pretty obvious. But look what happened. 1, 2, 3. All this new territory, they just conquered because those were traditional states, aristocratic states. They just conquered all that new territory. Now, what do you think they did? Gave that new territory to aristocratic lords? No, they gave it to more officials who took all that wealth from those new territories and gave it to the king. So he got even richer and richer and richer, right? And all of these officials in this new territory, which basically doubled the size of the Qin state, owe their loyalty to the Qin king. Does this make sense? And then in very short order, the the Eastern Zhou capital in Luoyang, by the way, he wiped that out. And you don't have to memorize this, but he wiped that out in 256. Normally, the textbooks say the Zhou dynasty ended in 221 when the Qin won. It didn't. Qin, like, to hell with the Zhou king. I'm a radical, right? This traditional, to hell with the Zhou king. So he just, like, took Luoyang in 256 before he even took all these other ones. So that was really the end of the Western Zhou throne. And then, you know, he makes short work of Chu next, and then those two little areas in the northwest. And notice the last one to fall is Qi, Confucius state, because Qi took Lu, where Confucius was from, right? And then bam, end of the Warring States period. So if the cause of legalism was to increase the power of the kings against their nobles and also against the neighboring states, and if the aims were basically the same thing, and if the policies were twofold, create new territory on the frontiers and put officials there, and then use your new power to start invading other places and put officials there, well, there is a new threat, and this is still, I think, what we went over last time. The threat is the officials now. The legalists argued, and I'm reading the legalist philosophers right now. They're so interesting. The legalists argued, those officials can also be a threat. What if Diogo is a general who I hire, not an aristocratic general, one who I hire because he's a really good warrior, and he's really good, and and I told him to conquer Wei. And he not only conquered Wei, but he also conquered Zhao. Do you think I should reward him, my official general, or do you think that I should fear him? What do you think? Discuss amongst yourselves. Think. Yeah, you're welcome. Sorry about that. But if you're the king, are you going to reward him or are you going to punish him? Okay, so for those of you who said he should be feared, that's what the legalist said. Don't let your officials do more than you tell them to do. If they do, it's possible, and the possibility is enough to punish them. It's possible that they're trying to gain more power because they have designs themselves, right? And so if they do more or less than what your job description tells them to do, if they do less, they're useless, punish them. If they do more, they're a threat, punish them, right? They do what's on their job description. How do you control the job descriptions? How do you control also the farmers? Through laws, through laws, through laws. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And Diogo, this is the point, right? So this is one of those moments where you go, so look what happens in the story right here. Because how did the Duke of Zhou say we should control people? Through law? Think about it. Think about it, guys. This is the pleasure of the whole subject. How did the Duke of Zhou say that we control people? Especially, thank you, the sumptuary codes. Remember those sumptuary codes? They're so interesting. It says the powerful, how do we keep the powerful from starting to become ambitious and too powerful? We expect two things: loyalty, and also that they don't have anything more than their position in the hierarchy says they can have. So we're also limiting them from doing more than they're supposed to do through sumptuary codes, right? Just like the legalists are saying, limit the powerful by punishing if they do more. But we've gone from sumptuary codes to legalism. And here's the thing, just as I said, we went from aristocracy to bureaucracy. Now we go from sumptuary codes to legal codes, to law codes, to law codes, from sumptuary to legal. And Confucius is so lovely. Restrain them with law and punishment, and they will become deceitful and dishonest, or whatever he said. Restrain them with ritual, and they will learn two things. Do you remember this, Confucian analyst? Restrain them with ritual, and they will learn shame and participation. Ritual, if they violate ritual, sumptuary codes being part of it, if they violate ritual, they will be ashamed, and society will shame them, and that's enough to make them behave well. Shame. You got an F, your family is ashamed. They're not going to punish you. They're just going to they're going to shame you. And you're going to feel shame. Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry, right? I'm not angry at you for punishing me. I feel bad because I've disappointed you. I'm ashamed. And that's going to make me try to do better. Well, so much for that, because the legalists are like, no, restrain them through punishment. So we go from sumptuary to legal. And this is a major, major cultural shift. In the last 3 decades, archaeologists construction crews were probably building a condo in China, and their bulldozer dug up a tomb of a Qin dynasty official who was buried with some bamboo strips, a book next to him, and those bamboo strips, and we had never seen Qin law codes. This Qin official was buried with the Qin law code in his grave with him on bamboo strips. And we dug it up just 15 years before you were born and started translating them. It was so exciting because we can finally see what the Qin laws are, right? We've only read about it. We've never seen it. But what it shows us is that, so what did an official do? An official was a scholar also, but what was this official a scholar of? He wasn't a scholar of ritual. Law. So what's your job? Your job is to know the law. You're a cop, basically. It's ruled by cops. Legalism is ruled by cops, law officers, law enforcers. A police state. Literally, a police state. And if that seems evil, there's something strikingly ironic in it, and that's that the rule of law replaces the hierarchy where the elites have some privileges and the commoners don't. The commoners have to work for the elites in the feudal system, right? The serfs have to stay poor, and the aristocrats get to stay rich, and they have different rights and privileges and all that sort of stuff. No more. So this is very, very European, actually, because one law, rich boy, you broke the law, you're caned. Poor girl, you broke the law, you're caned. Equality under the law. This is very democratic. This is very egalitarian. And this is very interesting because it's so, so, so modern. The French Revolution, the European Enlightenment, they're the first people who came up with this idea just 300 years ago in Europe. Equality under the law, the rule of law. Europe only did it 300 years ago. The legalists did it 2,300 years ago. But again, there was one person who was above the law, and that was the king, because the king created the laws. The king actually wrote the laws. Yep.
Was the king's position passed down to the son?
It was. It was still a dynasty. That's the greatest question in the world, and next class we will go there. And this is the problem of dynasties, right? What happens if your son's a loser? This is the problem of dynasties. And notice, China will be a dynasty for the next 2,000 years. Yeah? Oh, no? I need some tea. Okay, now, connections to Taoism. We talked about this last time. Taoism, feminine, soft as water, yin, all that stuff, right? But legalism is claimed to be so Taoist. Do you remember this? Do I need to repeat it? I don't need to repeat it? Because the emperor is like a shadowy presence because because the laws make him disappear. The emperor can now just sit still and face south and be a shadow that people never think or hear or see him. But they know his laws, and his laws, like yin and yang, actually govern the whole universe and keep everything in order and harmony. On the notes right here, on the objectives, it says, explain how the Qin dynasty solved the Achilles heel of Zhou feudalism. In terms of political policies, what's the political policy that solved the Achilles heel of Zhou feudalism? The officials. And the social reforms? Yeah, the political would be the laws. Social, think of classes. What has just happened to the class structure? What has happened to the class structure? What classes no longer exist? The aristocracy has been abolished. There is now one class of people, and then the king. It's like America, without the king part. It's France after the French Revolution. They abolished aristocracy because they voted for equality and liberty. The Qin's not much on liberty. Okay. Now, because... Oh, here, let me do it. Let me take care of that. Look at Daniel. If I were the first emperor, I would cut you in half, lengthwise. My favorite line, and a pope is the one who actually gave that order in the Middle Ages. The pope said, cut him in half. I love the pause, the long dash, lengthwise. Because suddenly you're thinking, oh. Okay. Take a couple and pass them around. And take it. I don't have time to be a waiter right now. Ginger sounds really good. Oh. Okay, so that was the... Huh? Okay. I was expecting a ball. We're going to be talking about balls in the very vulgar sense very shortly, just so you know. And it's history. I love it. We're going to be talking about balls vulgarly because it's history. I just love that. I get paid to be vulgar to make history a little more interesting. All right, home audience, we're making tea right now. That's why the pause. Okay. Wow. You know what? I am going to ask you to do this for homework because I didn't ask you to do it. You're going to watch the Qin movie tonight. It's only 40 minutes. It's awesome. You know the Terracotta Warriors. You know the Great Wall, right? It's an awesome freaking movie. There's more that you don't know. All right, so you're just going to watch that movie. All right? Some did, some didn't. I told you guys not to. Is that not true? I told you not to. Is that true? Yeah. Just the first emperor. The first 5 minutes. It's 47 minutes or something. And it's great. It's a really good film. All right. I just don't have time to show it in class. Okay. So you will see though that the first emperor, when he took power. Okay. So now Qin dynasty, new dynasty, wave 2 starts. Please because that was how he took. That's how he ended the Western Zhou. And to drive that home, right here in the objectives, this part, we are now moving from the 3 ancient dynasties to the Qin Empire. We are moving from the Qin Kingdom to the Qin Empire. We are moving from the Qin King to the Qin Emperor, the first emperor of China ever. They've never had an emperor before. This guy's the first. We're moving from feudalism to the new Qin state, which is modern, man. It's a centralized bureaucracy. He conquers all of it, and he makes it a bureaucracy, officials ruling, no lords, no. And it's based on meritocracy, not aristocracy, right? So that's all there for you. What do I mean by empire? I mean this by empire. Look what just happened to China. Here's the Yellow River. There's Luoyang. The Shang and the Zhou were just like from here up. Qin conquered all the way down to freaking Hong Kong. He left Fujian over here. It's mountainous. It was tribal. It was very, very backward. So he left that. It was too hard to conquer. But look at China expanding now. It is now not a kingdom, but an empire, because these are all really, really, ethnic minority people, different languages, all sorts of stuff. And Qin conquers that. Very quickly, what you see here is a map of the state. It has the Chinese provinces of today superimposed over. Ignore those. All I want you to notice is each one of these dots is a capital of, oh no, we can't call them fiefs anymore because no lords own them. What do we call them? States, province, good. Are you thinking, what do we call it in the new thing? Fiefs no longer exist. The feudal system is gone. That's part of it. You want? We call them commanderies. That's a nice legalist term for a state, a commandery. Think commander and then put Y at the end. Commanderies. And there were 36 because the Chinese are totally into numerology, and 6 is a really, really special number. And so 36 is a really, is it? 36 was in the old five elements correspondences thing, blah, 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 blah. It had to do with all sorts of things like the elements and the colors and everything, but we don't have time to go there. Okay, so in any case, he made 36 commanderies with 36 capital cities, each one governed by, really smart. We're talking politics now of the empire. If you were, okay, wow, what a problem you have. You are now governing from the Wei River an empire. And you don't want it to break apart. You don't want anybody to be too powerful, but far, far away. How are you going to keep them from being too powerful? Talk amongst yourselves, literally. What do I mean by too powerful? Whoa. Let's say in this commandery, this capital city, well, somebody's going to be like officiating over it, governing it. Well, what if they decide to like raise an army? What if they decide to rebel? How do I keep them from doing that? Talk. All right. I'll just tell you real quickly, and you can pat yourself or your neighbor on the back if they came up with any of the solutions. 1, he divided power. There was not one governor of each commandery. There were 3. 1 was civil, 1 was military, and the 3rd was an inspector. Because what if the general of the military in the province, in the commandery, and the governor started like saying, hey, the 2 of us should team up, right? Well, that's a problem. And so the 3rd person that he put down there was the inspector. And the inspector would like put his nose in both of their business and make sure that they weren't like planning anything wicked, right? Okay, so that was the first thing, divided rule. Anybody want to pat anybody on the back for this one? Anybody hits this one in the, all right, Sarah, woohoo. All right, 2nd, this one's really smart. You know the problem of term limits in the United States? Have you heard how people say there should be term limits for senators because once they have power, they just have so many advantages and they start becoming corrupt? And so notice, presidents can't serve for more than 2 terms. We limit their terms. Judges can serve for life, yeah, but presidents can't because we don't want them to become too powerful. In the same way, The legalists are so freaking smart. They saw this problem. And so guess what their solution was? Except that's a problem, because if somebody's a really good official, you don't want them to say, okay, you can't work anymore, but you don't want them to get too much power at the same time. So what are you going to do? You want to keep them, but you don't want them to get too much power. Well, oh, no, I thought you were saying this is, you were onto it, but it's different. Okay, every 3 years, rotate them. If you're ruling here, and all three aren't going to go to a new place, oh, hell no, right? Because they can, right? So split them up and rotate them to a different province, rotating officials, 3-year terms in each place, and then they had to move on. Do you see why it's so fun to talk about the legalists? Because they're bloody smart. Oh. Okay, if anybody is concerned about the future of my wife, that was $6, yada, yada. I'm not proud. Oh, no, don't put it in there. I see them all pulling out their purses. So if you were at church, you'd be so ashamed, just passing the plate without putting any money in it. Putting a gum wrapper in it or something. Oh, hell, there's tea in there. Oh, whatever. Okay. Okay. So that's the administration. Whoa. You're going to see this in the movie, but let's knock on through it, because by God, I'm so behind in this class, right? You know, it's been second semester is always horrible, but especially when an unexpected death in the family happens as well, right? And so I need to get through this stuff. So let's just preview it right now. Here we go. Chin is great. What are the dates of the chin? You kind of need those. So next to your heading, put the dates of the chin. And as I read these dates to you, I want you to seek for the WTF exclamation point when you hear the dates of the chin. It should shock you. In fact, I'm not going to tell you the dates yet. I'm going to tell you what he did. He built the Great Wall. How big is the Great Wall? In Qin, China, it was 3,000 miles. Over 3,000 miles. To put that in some perspective, so you know what that means, that is the distance from New York City to Seattle. That is the distance from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. And the first emperor of the Qin dynasty, who had already unified the empire, brought peace to it, and ended the feudal system, and created a modern government. While doing all of that, he built the freaking Great Wall. Now, to be a little more accurate, many of the warring states' lords built their own little walls to protect themselves from each other and from also the nomads to the north who are about to come into the picture for the first time. Oh, it's going to kill me. All right, so there it is. From there to there is roughly New York to Seattle. This is the first thing he did. Now, the Great Wall that you see today is the rebuilt Ming Dynasty Great Wall. It's a different Great Wall, just so you know. He standardized everything. Look at the things that he standardized, meaning everything there was only one standard for it. He standardized the script. The language, the writing started becoming different in the different states over the 500 years, 15 generations, 15 lifetimes of the Eastern Zhou period. The language started splitting up. So the one character for horse of the Western Zhou, there were 6, 7, 8 different characters in different states. And he said, oh, hell no. There is now, once again, there is only one character for all of our characters. I'm standardizing this script. We're keeping this script unified. He also standardized currency. The different states had different monies, different coins. And he said, oh, hell no, we got one coin. He standardized weights and measures. It's really cool. We have bronze measuring cups, measuring spoons from the Qin dynasty. And they have inscribed on the side, anybody falsifying the measurement of this will be killed, right? So this 1 liter spoon, if it's actually 2/3 of a liter because you greedy bastard, you're trying to like make a profit by selling less but charging the full price for it, the law was written on the spoon. You're dead, right? He standardized the axle lengths of chariots so that they would leave the same exact ruts in the road instead of different axle lengths, which would make axles break and wheels break off because you got different ruts in the road from different sized chariots. So they were all 36 hands wide because 36, again, was just this superstition number, blah, blah, blah. All right. Look what else he did. If by some chance that rotating official system and divided government system in each of the commanderies didn't work and they did start rebelling, we need a way to react very quickly. So, hell and damnation, we're building the Great Wall. We also need to build the imperial highway system. All of these are roads. Here's the capital, Way River. Look at this. He builds basically the U.S. interstate system, the interstate highway system, imperial highways, he does. You can make that a very short note, imperial highway system. Let me repeat. He brought peace to China and unity to China. It's easy to forget those two things. They're the most important things. China had been at war for 500 years. Hegemons, 2 warring states. 500 years they've been at war. People have been dying. People have been insecure. People have been miserable. People have been exploited. People have lost family members generation after generation after generation. And he ended it all. And he disarmed all of the people. He took their weapons from them, bronze, and he melted them down. And he made statues with them. And it is now against the law for you to carry arms because we have had enough war. I brought peace. He was very proud of that. This iron-fisted dictator thing that he's gone down in history as the great monster Qin. You'll see this in the movie tonight. He's gone down in history as a great monster. You'll see this in the movie tonight. He's so fascinating. It's important to remember. He unified China after 500 years of division, kept China China, kept it from becoming Europe, and he brought peace. And he built a great wall, and he made highways, and he ended the aristocracy and created equality under the law. Yep, bureaucracy, equality, meritocracy. All right, now, good. So now let's talk about balls. Okay, here's a new concept. Let's talk about balls. Okay, here's a new concept for you, the inner court. The inner court. Write it big. It's a cool concept. It's my favorite. The inner court. Now, here's the capital. Here's the layout of the capital. What do I mean by inner court? Well, the court's where the emperor lives, right? It's his palace. And so this is the way China's emperors are going to live for the next 2,000 years. So every single wave, every single dynasty is going to have an inner court, and they're going to live basically the same type of way, all right, in a palace. That is their inner private space. Okay, so here is a map of the Xi'an. It was called Chang'an back then. Xi'an, the Qin capital. And so here is the walled city of, and there's the Wei River, right? And this is a small picture of it. So here it is enlarged. And this was the emperor's palace. Now, please write these details down. You will just be so interesting when you travel China with people, all right? The emperor, Yao, Shun, and Yu, and the Taoists talked about the emperors and the sages sitting and facing a certain direction. Do you remember what direction? To sit and face south. To face south. Shun didn't have to rule at all. All he did was sit still and face south. Because he ruled like a shadowy presence. This is what the Taoists said, right? Because he was so good. Everything was just so good. He was good. He wasn't interfering with people. He was very wu-wei. All he had to do was sit and face south. And the people all ruled themselves well, and everything was peaceful. Facing south. So this is a huge, huge sort of sage concept. It makes sense because you're on the Yellow River, you're facing south. In any case, you're also facing like the sunrise from the north. So the palaces of the emperor are always on the north side because they want to face south. So in all the walled cities, the palaces are always on the northern end. So the emperor sits in his throne and he faces south. That's the first thing. Well, who does the emperor live with? Again, this is his private quarters. So we're doing a cast of characters here. Our first character is the emperor. Who's our second character? In the private life of the emperor. Come on, guys. Empress. The empress, his wife. Okay? I've got some pictures that I've nicked from Wikipedia, from Google. My favorite emperor, Kangxi, a young man at this point. Now, this is a Qing Dynasty emperor, but it's the same idea. So he's a young man. And as an emperor, he is a warrior. He is also a sage. He is surrounded by, of course, his guards, his imperial guard. But he's also a scholar. This is all pictures, paintings of the same emperor from the Qing Dynasty. Kangxi, he's my favorite emperor. Notice he has a book in his lap because he is a sage. He is a scholar. So he is a warrior, but also a scholar. Wen and Wu. Scholar, one. There again, the book. Look at that. Look at that. Show me how many U.S. presidents are shown in a portrait with a book. How many U.S. presidents try to project an image of, I am a scholar. I'm a learned man. I value scholarship and wisdom. All of the Chinese emperors had to, because they were the son of heaven. So there's Kangxi at his old age. Now, I heard empress. That's wife. Okay. What's the biggest goal of the emperor? In order to keep his empire and his dynasty going, what's his biggest duty? I got to have a kid, just any old kid. I got to have a son. Now, stay with me. This is fun. We got to get to the point in the next 5 minutes where we talk balls. I got to have sons. How many sons do I want? One? As many as you can. What's the problem with having one, Navi? Yeah, you do. What if he's dumb? All right? What's another problem of just having one kid? What if he dies? Okay. How many sons can my wife have in a lifetime? Clearly not enough, because she might have daughters too. Daniel, this is not boring. Stop looking at the clock. I need more than a wife, because she can't have enough sons. I need concubines. Concubines, write it down. So we have 3 casts of characters now. Emperor, empress, his wife, and concubines. Concubines are not prostitutes. They are not whores. They are not to be frowned upon. They are secondary wives. They're often the daughters of very, very powerful people who want their daughters to have a son with the emperor who might become the next emperor. It is not a dishonorable position at all. Don't be a Puritan, don't be a Westerner by thinking, oh, they're just there for... No, they're not whores. They're secondary wives. How many did he have? A platoon, I like to say. They were literally in ranks. You had concubines of the first rank, 10. Concubines of the second rank, 10 more. Concubines of the third rank, 10 more. Fourth rank. And the emperor wanted to fertilize each one of them. And this was his nightly routine. His servant would come, and instead of ginger snap cookies on the tray, he would have 40 jade little tablets, each with a number on it or a name, like hotel keys, right? Key rings. And he would bring it to the emperor. And the emperor would look at them, and he would see all the different concubines' names on them, and he would turn one over and give it back to his servant, who would then go to that concubine, who had her own little palace, the Forbidden City. When you go to the Forbidden City, you go into the north end. That's the private chambers of the emperor. You notice there are all sorts of small houses on the east and west side of the big palace in the center. That's where the concubines lived, right? So his home was his palace, and then a bunch of little concubine houses flanking it. Blocks and blocks of concubines. And he would go to, and the servant would go to one, and go, the emperor's coming to you tonight. And she would raise her red lantern and light it, and all the other concubines would see that in the street, and they would go, oh, he's going to her again. And I'm stuck alone. And she's going to have a son with him before I do. and she's probably possibly going to become an empress, and I'm not, because he's not letting me try to have a son with him. Very interesting dynamic going on. Now, this lady was a concubine who became this lady, and she gave birth to a son who became a king. So she went from concubine to mother of emperor, empress. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Who chose the concubines for the king? The king's wife chose the concubines for the king. Let me interview all the women that my husband's going to sleep with. Picture her, she's 50 here, interviewing 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old girls. Can you picture the drama, psychologically, the complete soap opera of what's going on in her mind as she's going, I'm aging, and these young, gorgeous hotties, I've got to choose. Is she going to choose ones that are unattractive? No. Is she going to choose ones that are stupid? No. Is she going to choose ones who are unhealthy? No. She's going to choose the best specimen she can, knowing that she's choosing her rivals, because they're going to move in, and they're going to live as neighbors for the rest of their lives. They can never leave. Okay, so, yeah?
Why would she pick someone who's like really?
Because you want to have a handsome heir to the throne, a smart one, a healthy one. Yes, because I think she would probably be killed. This was just an expectation of her role. Going back to role ethics, what is the role of an empress? Loyalty to the dynasty above all. It's not about me. It's about this dynasty, my husband's dynasty going on. We need to produce heirs. Let me get through this. And then, of course, there were the sons of the king, the princes. Now, the princes, Kangxi, who I showed that picture had over 20 sons. He had like 50 kids, 20 sons, who lived to adulthood. A lot of them died young. And they all started, give me 2 more minutes so I can talk about balls. They all started, the sons would they don't know who dad's going to choose, right? And so there's also drama between the princes. They're all trying to suck up to dad so dad will give me the throne and not my brother, right? And so the princes are another thing. When the princes reached a certain age, they became a threat to the emperor in terms of making babies. Why? At what age does the emperor start going, it's time for this boy to move out because I want to make sure that my concubines are having my babies? At what age would I move out my son? Thank you. Puberty age, right? When he hits 12, 13 years old, puberty, move him out because nobody can be near my concubines but me. Because I got to make sure that pregnant concubine is pregnant with my seed, not my kids or anybody else's. Now, so our last, notice there's one man and boys until they reach 6th grade in the imperial private quarters. Do you need men there for any reason, like adult men besides the one king? Discuss quickly. Why do you need men there? Okay, good. Guards? You're getting there. Guards, you need them as guards, and also to carry the heavy bronze vessels, also just to do the heavy work, right? Okay, and so this is our last character. Oh my God, I'll talk about him another time. Pictures of concubines, pictures of concubines, pictures of concubines, concubines. A Tang emperor built this for a concubine because she was so fine. It's a hot spring. He built that whole thing for his concubine to just chill in. And his wife, meanwhile, is going, ugh. Concubines, concubines, concubines. Oh my God. And eunuchs. E-U-N-U-C-H. A eunuch. E-U-N-U-C-H. What is a eunuch? It is a man who has had, write the word down. How many pieces of his body did he lose? 2? Wrong. You're thinking testicles. No, he lost his 3 preciouses. Let me quickly demonstrate. 1, 2, 3. One razor swipe left him looking, 3 preciouses. This is what they called it. Left him looking like this. I love Chinese dramas. Yes, the queen got an entertainer to check my genitals. There's a picture of a eunuch. Look at him. The penis and the testicles with one razor swipe removed and silk wadding plugged into the urethra until it heals so that he can still pee. He is incontinent for the rest of his life. He cannot control his bladder. He has to wear diapers the rest of his life. Now, why would anybody want to become a eunuch? Well, sometimes they were forced to. Keep writing. Sometimes they were forced to because they were war captives. We capture the sons of who we conquer, and we make them eunuchs to serve. That was one. Two, sometimes really poor people would go and sell them, pay $50 to a surgeon to cut off their Johnson, and then go and say, okay, I've done it. Will you please accept me as a servant? And get hired. Why? Because besides doing the heavy work, and this is my last point, besides doing the heavy work, and besides being a guard in the private quarters of the emperor, they were also the teachers of the boys, the playmates of the boys, these adult eunuchs, the princes, these little baby princes, these preschool princes. Until they're 12 years old, they need male company. Dad can't do it. He's busy running a freaking empire. So who do these young princes, one of whom will become emperor next, know most as they are growing up? Eunuchs. So the eunuch who was like the daddy figure, big brother figure, the eunuch who was the daddy figure, big brother figure, uncle figure, to the prince who became emperor, oh my God, he will have political power. Because the emperors know that there's one person they can trust, and it's that eunuch who I knew my whole life since I was a boy. So don't think these eunuchs are unimportant people. I've just finished explaining the inner court to you. I will leave it to your imagination of all of the different psychological intrigue, scheming, plotting, poisonings, just complete drama. Okay, thank you, and I'm sorry. I hope you enjoyed the cookies as a kind of bribe. And we close with this lovely picture of this man saying, "What happened to my three preciouses?" Hold on a second.